Okay, Brittany Bollard, welcome to the Whimsy Wellness Podcast. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Of course, I just have this feeling that this episode will be just really encouraging and like a life raft to people. And so it gives me like butterflies. Like as I was preparing for this, I'm like, I just love episodes where I have the feeling of like, this could really help someone who's struggling. And I feel like you do that literally for a living, which we'll talk about. But I just am like giddy to chat with you. So thank you so much. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I am in network marketing. That's kind of how I started. I went to a personal development event in the middle of my network marketing career where I was like, I'm not really doing this. This isn't for me. I went to the event just to get away from my life at the time. I just saw the event pop up, hopped on a plane and went to it. I had no idea what to expect, but I sat in front of a room full of women that for the very first time told me that I could take control of my life, that I could write the ending, that I could change anything that I knew. And so I was cracked wide open, and I knew that that was my calling, that that was what I was put on this earth to do, was to help women find their gifts, to uncover their gifts and to use them for their own purpose and for profit in business. And so most recently started, founded and funded. It is a community for women, for female owned businesses, and retreats using the Suzy Method, from Susie Holman, who has Suzy School, which is a retreat curriculum that talks about building businesses on Instagram, which is what most of us are doing. Even if we just have a personal brand with 200 followers, that's what we're all doing, is building ourselves on Instagram. So
Yeah,
the network marketing was something that I totally fell into, but was a stepping stone into what I'm doing now.
right. Isn't it so crazy? Like, first of all, I just love your story. And I feel like it's really relatable and that so many people, whether you're in network marketing or you're just kind of like you weren't really in your purpose and then you kind of found it, but you think like, I don't need like a community. Like that's so dumb. And then you like find like there's a difference between having friends that are like, oh, they're convenient friends, we live close. And then there's like friends who, just what you said, this was the first time that words were spoken over you. And like, there is such a difference. And you think you don't need it until you like have it. And then you're like, what? Where have I been? Where has this been?
I think even online, we tend to blame Instagram for a lot of
Yeah.
things, and we think that, like Instagram versus reality and all of those things, but something that you can find on Instagram is that community, and
Hmm.
it is so magical. And I mean, that's one of the number one ways to build your business, is through a community on Instagram versus having an audience. And so an audience
Yeah.
is just watching you, and a community wants to be a part of it, and it's something really, really special.
Yeah, it really is. And internet friends are the best.
They are.
Reverse,
They're the
reverse
absolute
catfish. So awesome. I actually like tangent. I got my Whimsy Wellness job through an internet friend. Like I saw she was working for Whimsy Wellness, never met her in my life. And I sent her an Instagram voice message like, how did you start working with Whimsy Wellness? It's just internet friends are
So
so cool.
I used to own a children's store.
Ooh,
And so most of my like original following is from that children's store. And most of my original business builders in my network marketing were those people from my children's store.
oh
And
my
so,
gosh.
and they're like the same people that I still have a relationship with now, and we cheer one another on, and have just been in one another's lives. For my oldest son is 9 years old, so for nine years, is when I had my store. And
Wow.
so you can build these relationships online with people that were, I'm pretty sure, like meant to be in your life. And that's just kind of like the vehicle that makes that happen.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. So true. So did you go, you went to Suzy School in the fall, correct?
mhm.
Did you go with the intention of like, I want to start Founded and Funded?
So I went to Suzy School in the fall with the intention of just really figuring out what I was going to use my platform for.
Hmm.
I had been given, I look at it as a gift. I'd been given that gift. I'd been able to reach those people through Young Living.
Hmm.
And I was kind of at a stepping stone of what do I do with this? And I knew that I had gone through different coaching courses and was doing empowerment coaching, and I just knew that something was waiting for me, but I
Hmm.
felt like I was wearing a million hats, and I just knew that I looked silly, and I needed to figure out which one fit best and which one I could really use my experience and my passion. And so I went to Suzy School, and Suzy gave me the opportunity. She's like, why don't you just do this? Why don't you teach the Suzy method? We know it works. And so I was able to host my first retreat in January, my second retreat in March, and I have 4 more scheduled for this year. So
Wow.
it's been such a blessing to be able to work with these women and to see them literally, like, I feel like we're just there ushering them back to themselves.
Yeah.
And so it's been such a gift to see these women walk out the doors and just with such confidence and passion and clarity. And
Hmm.
I know it's the same way that I felt when I went in October. And so I know that's the purpose and it's not lost.
Yeah. Wow, that is so cool. I
Yeah.
love that you call yourself a professional hype girl.
Yeah.
That is like my favorite title.
Well, it's
Um,
better than saying a professional cheerleader because people are like, oh, and they look at me and they're like, that doesn't add up.
you're like, oh, I wasn't.
I'm
No,
like,
I
well,
love
I'm a
that.
professional confetti thrower. They're like, what?
Yes.
So hype girl is definitely buzzword right now, but there's something like really amazing about being able to stand there beside someone and with them as they show up and as they see what we see in them.
Yeah,
And
for sure. That's such a gift. Have you always been, would you say you were always a professional hype girl, like even when you were a kid and then before you were doing this, have you always just been a natural encourager?
I would say that I am for sure a natural encourager. I think it's so hard to see our gifts because they're so close to us. And
Yeah.
so I thought that everybody could put on some lipstick and stand in front of a room of 1,000 people and tell them that they were worth it. And I
Hmm.
just thought that every single person could do that. I didn't realize that that was like my special gifting until I was
Yeah.
given the opportunity to stand in front of a room full of women and just to receive the messages that I did afterwards, like the very first time I did it. I was like, you know what? I feel like this is what I was made to do, and just kept leaning into that. And it's still scary and it's a lot of responsibility and it's
Yeah.
not lost on me, but I would say that my entire life was probably made to do this.
I love that. It's so sweet. Okay, so you coach women on discovering their magic and purpose. So I want to like dive into the hows. I've definitely like, I feel like it's so common. I've for sure personally been in that place of what even is my purpose? And I think like when you're walking that, you think it's rare. Like you look around and you're like, everyone knows what they're doing and what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm just stupid old me. I for sure struggled with that. And then like when you get out of it and like you talk to other people and they're secretly struggling and it's like so much more common than we think it is. So, what do you think is like underneath truly not knowing what we want to do?
So I think it's interesting that you went to the place of comparison in describing
Yeah.
that. And
Oh.
that is something that's so common. I mean, I do it myself. I think it's human. But in this business, or in any business really, especially with being an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
we think that she's better or she's smarter or has it all figured out, but she's actually just found herself,
Yeah.
and maybe she just knows who she is and she shows up even if she doesn't have it all figured out. And
Yeah.
people show up at our retreats and they want to make more money. They want to be successful. They want to grow their business or launch their business. And sales 101 is you should know, get your audience to know, like, and trust you. And something that we find with most women is that when they're feeling out of alignment or that they're struggling, it's because they don't know, like, and trust themselves.
Mm.
And so that's the very first thing that we do at the retreats is align ourselves in all of those areas. Like make sure that we really know, like, and trust ourselves. And a big part of that is finding our gifting and to give ourselves permission to show up as ourselves. And I would say that's the number one thing that sets apart someone apart who's successful in what they're doing and someone who feels stuck.
Mm. That is like, I feel like I'm in therapy. Okay.
Well, everyone has a gifting, and again, it feels like a buzzword. And so a gifting, most people think is a talent. It's something that somebody's really good at. And it's actually not, because a talent is something that you can learn. I could decide tomorrow that I wanted to play the piano, and I could hire someone to come to my house every single day. And a
Mm.
year from now, you may say, wow, she's really talented, but I worked really, really hard at learning that
Yeah.
skill.
Mm-hmm.
A gifting is something that we're born with, and it's something that we're passionate about. And there's some ways it's like, what can I do that I'm the best at? Like that I'm the best at. What am I the best at? And again, I said like our gifts are so close to us, so sometimes we don't even realize that it's our gifting. But it's
Mm-hmm.
usually what people associate with you. So earlier today, I
Yeah.
had a friend here helping me organize my new office, my new little
Mm-hmm.
closet office that I have now. And I've downgraded because I've now traded my closet for my office. So my clothes have a ton of room, and now my office has a tiny little like jail cell that I've tried to make cute. You can't see it, but
Yes.
and so she was here organizing, and I always stop her mid sentence, and I'm like, "Do you realize how I'll get talented, but like gifted you are?" And it's like the way her face lights up that she made a tiny little rack for all of my little mini crystals to stick in rollers. Like she made a tiny little organization for it. And like the way her brain thinks, mine would never think that
Yeah.
way. And she's grown an entire organization business around her gifting. And it's something for so long, she never even realized that she had a business there because she thought everybody's brain worked like that.
Right.
So our gifts are what we're best at, something that comes easy to you. It's something that people associate with you. And it's something you're already using in your everyday life. And
Mm.
so when we get close to that, then it's usually something that we know about ourselves and that we like about ourselves. And in that, we trust ourselves. And
Yeah.
so that is the number one thing. And I just love that when you asked the question, you went right to comparison, because that's
Yeah.
the dream killer.
Yeah, it really is. And it's like, right, I just feel like right from the start you're in high school still, and it's already like all your classmates know what they want to do, like what's your major? And it's just so much pressure, and it's assumed that, you're going to go to college, or like it's just right out of the gate. It's just like you have to know, and you're being shown that everyone else knows, and it's just so I don't know. It like is so frustrating and
Have you ever heard of the term ikigai? It's like a Japanese
no.
phrase. Okay, so it is basically your reason for being. And your ikigai is like it's this Japanese way of living that everything is like centered. And like I said, like that alignment word again is like a buzzword, but it's basically the thing that gets you out of bed every single day. And so
Yeah.
something that I know you've heard, and everybody listening, I'm sure, has heard, like, find your why. or,
Mhm.
why are you doing this? Why are you showing up? What gets you out of bed every single day? But your ikigai is what gets you out of bed every single day, like what you're good at, how you can make money doing it, what does the world need, and it kind of like is the center of all of that is your reason
Mhm.
for being. And so it's the people that love what they do. It's the people that love
Yeah.
their job. They don't work to live, or they don't live to work, they work to live, because they're just living out their passions. And so
Mm.
um at our retreats, it's something that we make sure that we're completely centered in all of those things. Because if you just show up to do your job and you're like living to work, we put our identity in that. And so when that
Mhm.
goes away, we have nothing.
Yeah.
Um,
Seriously. And when I'm glad you brought up like what's your why, because I think if you don't know like your giftings and purpose, and like please argue with me if you disagree, but like if you don't know your giftings and purpose, it's hard to like know your why. At least that was like the case for me. Like I was always just like my leaders in I was also in Young Living, and leaders are saying like, "What's your why?" I'm like, "I don't even know." You can't really know your why if you don't really know your purpose or your passions or your giftings, right?
yeah, I think it's the thing that makes you get out of bed every single day with a sense of gratitude. It's like
Mhm.
the number one thing that can't waver. It's what keeps you going. It's like your heartbeat. And your why is important. It's important to know, but I think your why is ever changing,
Mhm.
where the things that keep you aligned is like within yourself, and that's for
Yeah.
you and like
Mhm.
only you.
Yeah, that's very true. So, what are just like a few, especially for listeners who like are such great listeners and have a notebook or whatever, what are like a few questions? I know you named off a few. What are your most recommended questions to ask ourselves to help us discover like our giftings if we're
Okay.
unsure?
What are you good at?
Mm-hmm.
What do you love to do?
Hmm.
What does the world need? And
Ooh,
what can you be paid for?
love those.
And so those can all go, like Venn diagrams, those circles that overlap. You can
Yeah.
put these questions in circles that overlap. And in the very center of that is how you find your gifting.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, I'm just
Spoiler
like,
alert.
yeah,
People are
just
like,
like,
I will never pay for one of those retreats again. I'm just like,
yeah, they're just like, we make Venn diagrams. No, that, wow.
yeah,
I
your
love
business
those.
is your vehicle in
Mm.
all of this. It's not your everything. It's your vehicle. It's a part of it. It's one of those circles, something you can be paid for. And
Yeah.
it's not your ikigai. It's not your reason for being.
Yes, so true. I heard
It's
someone
just the thing
say,
that's going to push you when things get hard. Because that's
yes.
the thing that we forget. So many of us want to use our giftings in a business sense. We want to make money, right? Money is not bad. We want to make money. And so we're like, what are we really good at? What can we be paid for?
Hmm.
And our ikigai, or our reason for being, is the thing that pushes you when it gets hard.
Yeah.
And that's why your leaders have said, like, what is your why? Because when we're connected to our reason for being, our reason to keep going, then it pushes us when things get hard. Because work is called work for a reason. It's hard work. And
Yeah.
what is everything worth doing is hard.
Yeah. Wow. I heard like a business owner say once, like, I thought my business was my baby, but like our businesses aren't our babies. Like our babies are our babies. And like just what you just said, like you can't, I don't know, it just reminded me of that. It's not your business isn't necessarily like your everything.
No, I think our business is like a chance for us to show up as a part of ourselves and what we're good at.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's like, what happens if that all went away tomorrow? It's like, how do we
Right.
keep showing up as ourselves?
Hmm.
So I think that's something I've seen so much, is wrapping our identity and our worth in producing and in our businesses. And unfortunately, that's just the smallest part of it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you often say there's magic in your mess,
Yes.
which I love so much because friends, I told Brittany when I got on, I'm like, I sat in front of my microphone and my camera turned on. I'm like, oh, sweet Meg, you have a t-shirt on. Um, but so can you kind of explain what do you mean by there's magic in your mess? How can we find the magic in our own mess? Because some people might be listening like, oh, Brittany, you haven't seen my mess.
So the power of connection is the thing that keeps us going, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we already said, the difference between connection or community versus your audience. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're strategic in our connection, we let people see us, then we see them. And so what I mean by that is the power of showing up as yourself
Mm-hmm.
gives permission to others to do the same.
Yeah.
And when we collectively show up as ourselves, we create community. We create a space where people don't have to compare, where they feel seen, where it's not one-sided. It's not us just showing up. It's us saying, come along, right? We're like inviting others to join in on it. When we share our struggles with our gifts, we give permission to others to do the same. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something so powerful in that. There's literally nothing like it. And so when I first became a mom, I realized really quickly that this wasn't going to be the thing that I was the best at.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of going online and comparing myself to the Pinterest mom or the perfect
Mm-hmm.
Instagram mom or all the things, I showed up one day and said, this is really, really hard. And this was 9 years ago. So this was before everybody was like, you know, this was before that this was a culture thing
Yeah.
and or a pop culture thing, I should say. And I showed up and said, this is really, really hard. And I found a community of women that said, this is really hard. Thank you so much for saying that. And we can do hard things, but we need to do them together. And there is
Yeah.
so much power in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So the magic comes along in showing up in our whole selves and not just when it looks perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the magic in the mess is where we develop that trust with our
Mm-hmm.
audience and with ourselves, and we can say that we can show up as us and not perfect.
Yeah. And that's often like what people, like you said, that's what people relate to. Like we have these things about ourselves that we like, oh, I should tuck that away because it's not so glamorous. But then, like, when we finally show it, it's oftentimes that thing that's like the Me Too moment that you're creating with your community or, whatever the case may be. It's so true. Okay, let's talk about taking that magic and turning it into profit because that's what you teach at Founded and Funded, right? So, can everyone's passions make them a profit?
I believe that if everybody is willing to put the work in, then everybody's passions can turn into profit for
Love it.
sure.
Love it. What's like the not craziest in a judgmental way, but just like if you heard it, people might think like you can't make a business out of that, but you've like witnessed it.
I've seen a lot of, and I think I do have somebody coming to one of our upcoming retreats that are like dog breeders. There were like 4 golden doodle breeders at one of the recent Suzy schools. It's not crazy. I think it's so cool. But like if someone was like,
Yeah.
well, my passion is dogs, and you're like, are you a veterinarian? You're like,
Yeah.
no, but that's pretty cool. I have a friend from one of my Suzy schools that is killing it in gardening. She's working with a lot of brands around gardening and making gardening cool again. And we
Yeah.
laugh because she's from Southern California. She gets her lashes done. She's just like so cool. And she literally is making like a huge business off of gardening in her backyard in Orange County, which is not usually heard of.
Yeah.
Let me think what else. It's really cool to see women step into their gifts. At our last retreat, we had somebody, who speaks about just like a history of culture with toxic relationships with women,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like the Regina Georges of the world. And
Yeah.
it gave us all the opportunity to realize that like we've all been victimized by Regina George, but we've also all been Regina George.
Ooh.
And it's just really awesome to see these women come and step into the things that have been like placed on their heart and be able to use it with such conviction that they're now building businesses around those passions and those
Yeah.
giftings.
Yeah. No, I love that. I just wanted you to share because I feel like, that just like I compared to other people, people are listening thinking like, but you don't know my passion. Like, there's no way. And just what you said, like, if you believe it, you can.
I think it also creates connection, which your business may not be that passion that you have or your exact gifting, but it's going to help you build your brand, which is just as important. And
Mhm.
so I always say to people, like, if you are a cat lover that loves watching supermarket sweeps, chances are there's other people in the world that are going to connect with you over both of those things. And so they will buy what you're selling. They will trust you. They will
Yeah.
know you. They will like you. And so that's why I love utilizing Instagram to build your brand, because your business may not be that exact thing, but your brand can be. So
Yeah.
those are the kinds of things that we talk about.
For sure. What about like when you know your passions, right? But you're like, how could this passion or gifting possibly be a business, right? Because we see it on paper and sometimes it's like, I don't even know what to do with that. And I'm sure we've heard before, maybe not, but like when people say like know the business you're in, like oftentimes customers don't even realize the actual business that a business is in. Like I think the example that I had heard was like McDonald's. Like we think as customers McDonald's is like a hamburger business, but they're not. Like McDonald's knows that you can go anywhere else and get a better hamburger, but they're in the real estate business. Like that's their right? So, can you kind of touch on just because, like, on paper, this is your passion, your business over here can still kind of reflect that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about a little bit ago, where what you're good at is different than, or maybe different than what the world needs, and what the world needs may be different than what you can be paid for. And
Yeah.
so by spending that time answering those questions, we find that small section where it overlaps, and that becomes the business. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
what, yes, there may not be a huge market for the thing that you're completely passionate about, but you can also find something that you're good at, something that you can build a business around and bring those things that you're passionate about to that business.
Love that.
We do have a strategy coach at each retreat. So we come up with that strategy, we look at the numbers, we figure out what makes sense, and we help you build that business.
So, so cool. Okay, so we discover our magic and passions. What's the next step? Like, okay, this is the business that I'm going to create this, or this is how I'm going to make money with it. How do we then make money with it?
That's a good question.
That's like a
So
huge question.
that's a huge question. I'm like, how do I show all my cards here? So I think figuring out, again, those two questions, what the world needs, how you can be paid for it. And so the number one thing I would say is ask yourself if somebody else is doing it. And
Mm,
it's more than okay if they are. It's taking the time to research like how they're doing it, who your competitors are, why people use your competitors, and figuring out how you solve that problem, what difference of a brand you make. And like as far as making money doing it, setting those goals for yourself, setting the projections, figuring out how you're going to do it. And I would say looking at your competition and or your competitors, and figuring out how you can bring your own gifting to your own brand. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, for sure. No, I really like that. Okay.
Most people aren't buying, like, what is it, people don't buy what you sell, they buy what you do, right? So
Yeah.
That's why finding your gifting and finding, who you are and bringing that to your branding is so important.
Yes. Yeah. They buy, what is it? Like they buy you before
Yeah,
your
they buy who
product.
you are, not what you
So
sell.
true. So, so true. Okay. There's a stigma around like making money off of our gifts, right? I feel like, especially for women, I'm just going to say that. How do we release the fear of that and even just like the knowing that there is that? I don't know if you saw this, but I feel like there were a couple of Instagram posts going around lately that was almost like a little shaming towards like profiting off of sharing your giftings when like why not just give it away for free. I was seeing a couple of those and I was like getting a little defensive. But it's just so common. So can you kind of speak on that and like how we release it?
I would say that a man would never apologize for the things that he is good at. I think as women, a sisterhood is so important. And I think that's maybe where those posts came from, to support one another, not from a place of profit. But I also think that there's like absolutely, I'm like at a loss for words, because I just feel like I can't think of one reason why you shouldn't step into your gifts and use them to benefit yourself and your family.
Yeah, agreed.
And I would rather work for myself any day of the week than waste my talents and efforts working for somebody else who's not living out my dream.
Yeah. Seriously. And like I think I've said this on another episode before, but like if we think doing things for free, you're going to resent it. But it's also like I can't even tell you the last thing I won or got for free because like we don't value free products or services as much as we do when we invest in it because it's like, oh, I spent my money on that. I should probably show up or I should probably use it. Right. So
Yeah,
it's
have
like,
skin in the game. I think when somebody is looking to step into their gifts to use it for a profit, they're looking for a way to fulfill their own dreams and fulfill their financial needs and the financial needs of their family, then they shouldn't be shamed for it at all
yeah,
whatsoever. And like I said, a man would never apologize for that.
yeah, truly
I would
like that.
say one of the biggest things that comes out of our retreats is this sisterhood, where if there are 20 women in the retreat, then you're walking out with 19 new customers. It's like one of the most beautiful parts of it, that the girls utilize one another for their gifts and services. And there's a girl that was designing websites, and like 6 of the girls used them to launch their new site in like the last couple months. And I try to use women-owned businesses as much as possible.
Hmm. Yeah, I that's something I've learned from Haley. Like she has definitely instilled that into me. Like when you can shop small. I mean, I was always passionate about it, but there's something about working closely with a woman-owned business where you're like, wow, this is like actually making an impact, you know?
Well, and the statistics are there that women-owned businesses, well, they are killing it in 2020, 2021.
Yeah, they
For
are.
sure. But the statistics are there that women don't get paid as much as men. They don't get the same opportunities as men. And I mean, listen, I have 2 boys. And so I will support them in their hopes and dreams just the same as I do my
Hmm.
daughter. But as women, I think it's our responsibility to break that stigma and to show up and ask for what we want and
Yeah,
expect the same response as our male counterpart.
agreed. Okay, social media, it's a whole beast. I feel like so with sharing online, I feel like at one point, even just a few years ago, it might have been like, I don't even know, but it might have been like a little bit more accepting to just like show up and be who you are. But now it feels a little bit more competitive with like the algorithm and that like literally everyone is on there and like all of those things. And so it kind of feels like between the algorithm and keeping up with what I'm supposed to be posting, I think it's really common to be like, I don't even want to be posting this, or, like you can't even be yourself and you're losing yourself. So, what are some, even though social media is like a whole beast, what are like just a couple like top thoughts or tips around that?
Yeah, I think when we were talking about community versus audience, I'd rather
Yeah.
have 200 engaged followers than 10 million just watching my life.
Yeah.
And I think when we look at our social media as 200 people that know, like, and trust us versus
Hmm.
a million people that they may like what they're seeing, but they don't know us enough to trust us, or they're just watching it as opposed to being a part of our brand or our life or whatever you're putting out there. It's so much more powerful. And so I've actually gotten away from being concerned with the number of followers or the number of likes, and more concerned with an engaged community.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so even in, like, let's say like network marketing or whatever, people are like, I don't have that many followers, but I'm like, you have 200 people watching what you're doing. You have 200 people who are there to know you and be a part of what you're putting out. And that's way more powerful than 5 times that number of people who aren't engaged with what you're doing.
Yeah, seriously. And a lot of times we hold ourselves to these big, big accounts, but sometimes like I'll catch myself and like if you look at, the comments, their comment section, it's like, oh, there's really not a community here. You happen to post something today and I was like scrolling through the comments. I'm like, oh my gosh, is she a Kardashian? That's like that's not a good example, but there were just so many comments. It's so clear that you've like built this community. Like people love, it was a post about your daughter. Like these people love your baby. It's obvious that not all of them have met her. They just like genuinely love her because you've shown up and you've invited them in to love her, not just like, here's my baby. She's
I've
not a baby,
asked
but
I've asked them for help along the way, and people want to be a part of something. And like I've said, like, I mean, I know we've said that word community 3,000 times if you counted on this podcast already, but people just want to belong somewhere.
hmm.
And the best way to invite people in is to make like a comfortable, warm, welcoming space where there is no judgment. And the biggest way that we could turn people away from that is when we're judging others and when we're judging ourselves. And
Yeah.
so, back to that magic in the mess, that is the magic. That is the magic, is showing up in all of your mess and being brave enough to invite people into it. And that's
Hmm.
where the magic happens.
Yeah. Love that so, so much. Okay. So if you could sit down for coffee with like a woman listening to this who feels like she's like drowning in her mess and is not seeing this magic we speak of, despite having dreams, what would you like say to her?
I would say to her, well, first, I would probably tell her my own story. I think, like I said, being vulnerable is an opportunity and an invitation for somebody else to feel comfortable to do the same.
Hmm.
And so, when I first went to that event, I was at my own rock bottom. My marriage was failing. I was failing as a
Hmm.
mom. I was unhappy as a mom. I would spend a million hours a day at my shop working just to avoid my life. I took that ticket to that event not because I cared what it was going to do for myself or my life, but because I literally wanted a ticket to get the heck out of my life for
Hmm.
a weekend, and I didn't care what it meant. And I sat in a room where people told me that I was important and that I could write my own ending and I was worth more. And I heard them, and just having those words spoken over me and the power in
Hmm.
that, knew that it was my calling to turn around and pass that torch to another woman. And so anytime I get the opportunity to sit with a woman who is sitting there feeling like they don't have any options, and just sharing my own struggles and giving them permission to do the same. And
Yeah.
so I feel like my number one thing that I would say to her is that she's worth it. And yeah, I would just say that she's worth it. And I think so many times we don't realize like how worthy we are. And it breaks my heart, but at the same time is so life-bringing to watch the women at our retreats see what we see in them.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind that they walk in that door and within the first day we can see, you know, their gifts and their talents and their light, and they don't.
Yeah.
And the second that they see it, their whole world changes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. You were, yeah. I'm just like picturing it. It's like, I'm like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Uh, so we talked a little bit earlier about, well, we've been talking the whole time about founded and funded. Can you tell us a little bit more like specifics, if I could talk, who it's for, why we should go, how we can go, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So we really geared these retreats towards women that are growing businesses on Instagram or have a dream that's been placed on their heart to grow a business, even a lifestyle or personal brand on Instagram. Someone who feels stuck, someone who feels like they're just ready for more, someone who wants to learn how to monetize through social media.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Something that we do at the retreats are develop our giftings. Obviously, we talked about that a lot, kind of getting unstuck or aligning with our purpose. We do strategic coaching, so figuring out how we're going to make money when we leave, and social media coaching, so teaching how to work with brands, brand partnerships, utilizing our social media and Instagram specifically to grow our business. And honestly, we've had such a mix of people with 100,000 followers, people with 200 followers, people with successful businesses, and people with just an idea. And we stick them all in the same room. And that power of our utilizing our strengths with one another is literally priceless.
Yeah.
So there is like a complete strategy to the groups that we put together because everybody learns from one another. And the sisterhood that I keep speaking of is something that I was actually dreading when I went to Suzy School in last fall. I was like, I don't need one more friend. Like,
Yeah.
it'll be great to meet people, but I don't want to have to do this like sorority thing. I don't
Yeah.
know what this is going to be like. And to just sit in a room with women cheering one another on, and then
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't go away when you leave. That continues to carry on, and there's something so special about that.
Yeah. Ooh, I want to go. How can we go?
So if you go to foundedandfundedco.com, the application is on the website. Our Instagram, Founded and Funded Co, has the website on it. And I have a social media manager that helps me build community on there as well. So we've been featuring female founders. You can
Mm.
also nominate women for the retreat. We do scholarships from time to time. It's something that we're not getting away from, but we've kind of separated the process a little bit, just kind of what you said as far as the skin in the game earlier. We find that when people figure out how to invest in themselves,
Mhm.
then we see a bigger return on their investment.
Yeah, for sure. I think, did you mention where it was? I can't remember if we said that.
So we do it at Suzy School headquarters in Golden, Colorado. The retreat space is insane. We have a private chef that takes care of all the meals and snacks while you're there. She is amazing, and it totally adds to just feeling taken care of and invested in. And it's a 3-day retreat. It's a business intensive. A lot of people's like, what do I tell my husband? Like, it is a 3-day business intensive.
Yes.
All of that heart work and soul work that's so important, you can leave that part out of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, the immediate ROI that I see with the women coming out of there has been amazing.
Yeah. I've been loving like following along with it all. And it's just like, it's so, so encouraging and inspiring. And hopefully I'm allowed to share this. Otherwise, edit it out. But just kidding. I'm allowed to share that Haley, our founder of Whimsy Wellness, is going in June.
In
So,
June.
so exciting. We've been talking about it forever. I'm just like, you should go talk about professional cheerleader hype girl. I'm like, you have to go. You should go.
You need to come to the next one. But
Yes, I
yeah,
would
so
love
she's
that.
coming in June. I'm so honored to have her there. It will be, I've never been at something that takes that heart work, takes the actual strategy, and then streamlines it and how we grow our businesses through Instagram, because Instagram is such an avenue for
Mhm.
all of us. And so to shed that light on how to utilize it from a place of positivity is really rewarding.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, are you ready for rapid fire?
Okay.
Okay, personal growth book that every woman needs to hear or read.
Well, anything by Brene Brown, Daring Greatly. I would say Start with Why is another really good one.
Ooh, ooh, I haven't read that one. I have read Daring Greatly. It's so,
Start
so
with
good.
Why is by Simon Sinek.
Oh, okay, I love him. Good one. Who's your entrepreneurial girl crush?
Hmm. Entrepreneurial girl crush is, I'm super honored that Suzy asked me to teach Suzy schools or the Suzy method. And I would say that she's a really smart businesswoman that hasn't lost herself in her growth. And I think that's something really awesome, that she shows up messy and unafraid and does it anyway. I would also say Rachel James of Wild Alabaster was at our January retreat. I think that Rachel has taken Wild Alabaster. She found her giftings and her passions, has built $1 million business doing it.
Hmm.
I would say
Yeah,
both of them.
love that. Rachel was on episode 6, and I agree. I love her. Late night guilty pleasure snack.
Oh, ice cream. I
Mm.
recently had my daughter filled out the Mother's Day placemat that had all the questions on it. And the one question was, my mom is funniest when? And then she wrote, eats ice cream for dinner.
And you're
I was
like,
real
thanks,
proud.
thanks for blowing me in.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so since we're Whimsy Wellness, what's your favorite DIY roller blend recipe?
Oh, right now is a mermaid roller, which is
What?
sounds cheesy, but I cannot get enough of this. It's sandalwood,
Okay.
vanilla, bergamot, and lavender. And it
Oh,
is so good. You will never be the same. So you're welcome. And
yeah.
as far as sandalwood, you can use either.
Okay. Yes, I was gonna say people will ask that. Okay.
Yeah, you can
And
use
then
either. And vanilla, you can use either, like, what is it, cold pressed vanilla? I don't even know if that's
mhm,
the proper term, or vanilla EO.
perfect. Okay, and then where can people find you and follow along with you?
So you can find me on Instagram and all of my messiness at Brittany Bollard, and at Founded and Funded Co.
Yay! Thank you so much. I learned something. I felt like I had breakthroughs. I hope people listening did. I know they did. It was such a treat. So I really, really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. And all of my, I have to tell you, I have Hashimoto's, and my thyroid is acting up. And I feel like to jump on interviews right now, and I'll be super vulnerable, feels really scary because my brain fog is like heavy. It is thick
Yeah.
fog. I need like fog lights.
Yeah.
And so I am sitting here like, oh, rapid fire questions. Great. How am I going to even find the words to answer? But you show up messy and you do it anyway.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.